disciple people. We really do. We just need help trying to convince them that they actually need this. It's good for them, right? Like eating your vegetables and taking vitamins, except a lot more fun most of the time. Except for when Jesus decides to prune you. You won't tell them that up front, right? Okay, when I mentioned that we talk about small wins a lot. So we go around the room and we say, what's a small win? Tell me a way that you have seen God at work in small ways that He's moving them closer and closer to Jesus. I think about one of our small wins that we have right now. 2 years ago, we started a men's ministry, and I'll talk about how that happened. But one of the men in the group, he's been coming and participating pretty regularly for 2 years, and he just doesn't share a whole lot. He just listens. And so about 6 months ago, maybe not even that long ago, maybe 4 months ago, he started asking the guy for prayer. He hadn't seen his grandson in like 8 years, and so he really wanted to reconcile that relationship. God was working on his heart, and he felt like God was calling him to do that, to reach out and reconcile, but he knew he would be rejected if he reached out. So they just started praying. And 2 weeks before Christmas, his grandson actually called him. And so he flew up from California, and he was reconciled on Christmas Day. And I've just seen his countenance change as he has watched God respond to prayer and to his obedience. So much so that someone who hardly ever shared in the group prayed for the first time a week ago in small group out loud for the other men in the group. Now that seems really minute. And those are things we're not usually going to get up on the platform and we're going to share. But you need to be sharing those anyway. You need to be sharing those in your small groups. You need to be sharing them in your ministry teams, in your board meetings, any way that you can be sharing those small ways so that we don't lose hope. That God hasn't abandoned us. He's still at work. He's doing radical things that we just can't see. So is there anyone, small, okay? I don't care how small. 1, 2 people? Angela?
We have 3 sisters from ages 10 to 16 who come from next door to the apartments. And we figured their motivation has been for food in the mornings and to also be able to use the Y afterwards, which hasn't handed out, but they continue to come. This past week, we've been praying that the Holy Spirit would knock on walls, because about all we get from them is if you try to talk to them, they're not interacting with us. Sunday morning, they interacted with me and at least said a few things and looked up from their phones and tried to engage me. But then when I was preaching, I noticed about for 5 minutes or so, they were turned around and they put their phones down and they were watching as I was preaching. So we are making strides.
Hey, if you get anybody to put down your phone and listen to a sermon, that's really awesome. We used to do this really well, at least I heard stories. I wasn't raised Nazarene, but we called them Testimony Sundays, right? But we've lost that art. So how about we resurrect that in some of our churches in some way or capacity, especially in your smaller, intimate groups, so you can really talk about, you can really share that. We're going to talk about small groups in just a minute, but first I want to give you 2 books that will really help you. One is called 101 Ways to Reach Your Community, and the other is called 101 Ways to Help People in Need. Steve Schrogren, do not ask me how to spell it. Is that or something? SJ something. If you put those in Amazon, you'll see he's written a whole bunch. He wrote A Conspiracy of Kindness. But what I like about these 2 books is it gives you practical ways to live some of these things out, and each one will tell you how many people you need to do it, how much money it's going to cost, the supplies you need, and then the quote-unquote effectiveness. In other words, are you breaking ground, plowing rock, pulling weeds, or fertile soil, planting and watering fertile soil? So those are great resources, and I would encourage you to try as many things as possible. I know it's really hard for established churches. You try something, and then you're like, I don't know if that worked, and you don't know if you want to try it again, and you're embarrassed, and all that kind of stuff. We just have to keep throwing mud on the wall and to see what is going to stick. You have to keep trying stuff. We've done so many things in the last 10 years that were total bombs. We tried to have a carnival, because 80% of our community is Catholic. And so we're like, we'll have a carnival. So I don't know, I think it's the not having the beer tent that didn't help us. I'm not sure. But it was a total bomb. And we spent all kinds of money on it. And then the next year, I'm like, let's try it again. And God bless our people. They're like, sure, why not? You know, and it was a total bomb. And we spent a whole lot of money. And so we're just like, okay, we'll move on. And so you try some other things. But there are... one of the things I think frustrates me is we're a small church, and I'm going to guess a good chunk of you are smaller churches, 150 or less, right? And so maybe a lot less. It's all right, but I go to conferences, and everybody is talking to churches of 300 to 500 that have $250,000 budgets or more, and I just don't have that kind of a budget. One group was talking about how they go in and they bring donuts every month to this entire elementary. So they serve donuts to the entire elementary and their staff. And like, I haven't done the math, but I'm going to guess it's probably cost them about $5,000 to $6,000 a year out of their budget to do that. Now, if I had $5,000 or $6,000, I would hire a youth pastor, a bivocational youth pastor. That's what I would do with that money. So some of us just don't have $5,000 or $6,000 to do something like that. But there are things that you can do that don't cost that. One of the things we did was we started a school supply pantry for the local elementary school. So we do a huge school supply drive. We'd ask them, give us a list of your 10 most needed items, and then we take them to the elementary school, and we stock a closet for the teachers because they know what they need. And then they distribute it, and then we also have handwritten notes, and each note contains a gift card to Starbucks in it for their first day of school. And they just look forward to that every year. Now, it has not, we haven't been able to get past that door. We haven't been able to get into tutoring or anything like that. But they know that we're a safe place. And so occasionally they have a student or a family that really needs a church to love on them. And guess where they send them? They say, you know why? Because we can trust these people. And so some of this is just showing us that we're trustworthy. And we have a really great connection with our community. So we average about 55, 60 on a Sunday morning. We have over 100 people that call us their church home. In other words, they attend at least one Sunday a year, but you know how that works now, right? Your regulars attend maybe twice a month. But we have almost 400 people that follow us on Facebook. Most of them are from our community. So there's all of these people in our community who are like, that's our parish. But they've never been to our doors on a Sunday morning. And we realized we had this great connection, and we've done a really great job, but we're like, how do we then move them into small groups? Because we know that they need discipleship. We know that they need to be in the Word. They need to be connected with other believers if they're really going to grow, and if God's going to start pruning them and transforming them internally. We know that they need to be praying together, practicing spiritual disciplines, but you can't convince them. If you haven't been in a Bible study or a small group or some kind of a ministry like that, you do not understand the value. You understand the value of those connections. The power of somebody else calling you up when you've had a really bad day or sending you a text, and just knowing that someone was thinking about you and caring for you. And you just can't communicate that to them. So we completely restructured 2 years ago our discipleship process with this idea of helping people to take baby steps. One of the things that we do at first is we have some one-on-one things that we'll do. So if people really start seeking Christ and asking spiritual questions, we'll set them up and we'll do a one-on-one thing with someone. Let's just go have coffee, and we're just going to talk through these questions. Our biggest one is what we call Multiply. And it's 12 weeks, and for 12 weeks, all you do is talk about And the whole focus is on that relationship. We don't focus on scripture. It's not a teaching study. It is simply about helping people foster a relationship with Christ. Because I think we tend to do the opposite. First, we teach people about Jesus, and then we want them to have a relationship with him. And sometimes they have so much head knowledge that they never get around to actually having a relationship with Christ. And then we wonder why we have Christians who've been in the church for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but they really haven't changed. Because they don't have a relationship with Jesus. They have a relationship with Scripture and a lot of head knowledge. And so we kind of swapped those two. And so we said, we're just going to talk about what it means to have a relationship with Jesus, to listen to him every day, to begin hearing his voice, talking to us, what that even means to hear his voice, and enter in. And begin shifting our perspectives. We kept asking the question, who is God? Every time we read a passage of Scripture. So we decided what we would do is, we call it beta testing. So we say, hey, we've got this new group, and it needs some people to test it out. So we want you to test this. Now I'm going to know all my secrets when they see this in the thing. But we say, we want you to try this out. 12 weeks, that's all we're asking for. And at the end of that 12 weeks, you can critique all of the curriculum, and we're going to go through it, and we'll change whatever we need to change. So we want you to be our testers. And everything is by personal invitation only. So we kind of took that 80-20 rule, right? Really 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. Well, about 20% of your congregation are really hungry for Jesus. So we started saying, who are the ones that we already have a relationship with, whether they're here on Sundays or maybe not yet, maybe they're not even here on Sundays, we have these relationships with them in the community, and we know that they're beginning to ask questions, they have spiritual questions, they're hungry for God, and so we're going to personally invite them to test this new material out. So we had first group that went through was about a group of 5, and then we had another group of about 12, and then I made my board go through it. As I said, if you're going to be leaders in the church, you have to be able to speak into this material. So you can do it. It won't kill you, I promise. At the end of 12 weeks, you'll still be alive. If not, I'll come visit you in the hospital, and I'll promise I'll do your funeral. So they said, fine, we'll do it. Well, at the end of those 12 weeks, something begins to happen in people, right? We know what happens at the end of 12 weeks. When you start talking about this one who radically changes our lives, when we start talking about one who is love, one who is holy, right? One who is merciful, one who is gracious, when we start talking about all the things of Jesus that are beautiful and holy and pure and good, you taste and see some pretty good things over 12 weeks. So at the end of those 12 weeks, we say, okay, I'm going to give you, I gave them a piece of paper, and there are 5 options they could check. One of them was, I want to do this group again. Like, I didn't get enough out of it, I want to do it again. The other one was, I want to lead this group. I enjoyed it so much that I have 3 friends, and I want to lead this group. The next one was, I'm not ready to lead a group, but I'd like to do something a little bit more intense. We called it was Disciples, 24 weeks long. And then another option was, I'm going to just commit to reading the Bible and spending time every day with Jesus for 10 minutes a day. And then the last one was, I'm good. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, there were some people who chose, I'm good. And that was fine. That's where they are spiritually. We did our job. But we took those other people and we just ran with them and we moved them. So at the end of 2 years, here we are. We had maybe 5 people, so barely 10% of our congregation who were involved in some kind of small group Bible study, etc., etc. One man. And at the end of 2 years, we have about 60% of our congregation who are involved in some kind of small group. And we have close to 70% of our men involved in some kind of group. Out of that first group, two of our men who did it said, we need something like this, but we need it just for the men. We need a safe place where they can come and they can talk, and kind of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in the men's ministry stays in the men's ministry. And we had to, each week I'd have to go in and I'd have to promise the men I would not find out. I'm not going to know what happens in there unless you share it with me, right? I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to know what happens. This is your space. And this year, at the end of 2 years, that men's group, they adopted this class. I already mentioned that. They adopted this Pastor Corey's inner city class. They went shopping for all of the gifts. They wrapped all of the gifts. Then they dressed up as Santa and his elves, and they went down to the school, and they sat there. We have videos of them, and they called each child by name. And every child actually got 4 presents. They got either a hat and gloves, 1 toy, a book, and a blanket. Most of those kids in her class are homeless, and those will be the only presents that they'll get. She said it was the most participation she's ever had from parents in her church. But we had all those men come down the aisle the Sunday before they were going and bring all their gifts and line up. And so the entire congregation, we just prayed over them right there. And I'll tell you what, that's not a small win. That's a big win. Amen. A big win that took over 2 years to happen. I watched these men completely transformed by small groups and community because of a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so the first thing I want you to say is your responsibility list is your tribe. You remember your responsibility list? I hope so, because you're supposed to report that to your DS. The responsibility list is anybody that is within reasonable driving distance to your church that you have some contact information for, that you can follow up on. I divide mine into 2 groups. So one is, I just call it my worship list, my worship responsibility list. And so that's anybody who has ever attended a Sunday morning or beyond. And then I have my responsibility list, which is anybody that is within reasonable driving distance, that doesn't have a church home, that we have contact for, and that has participated in something. They come to trick or treat, right? They come to VBS, they participated in egg hunt, we've met them through soccer, whatever it is. That is your tribe. We need to begin thinking of this. Our responsibility list is our congregation. I think we treat them as extras, and they're not extras. They're probably the most important people that we have to minister to throughout the week. The people who are on the farthest edges of our responsibility list. So we want to think bigger, reach wider, and start here. Sometimes we're going after all these other people, and instead of stealing sheep, what if we just take on that whole gigantic responsibility list that Jesus has given to us? And one of the things I find is with that responsibility list, we want to give them a place to belong before they believe. I already told you about Janet, and I'm gonna finish up with Woody, and then I'm gonna give you some take-home work. I already told you about Janet. We gave her a place to belong before she believed, and that was playing the flute in the worship team. Woody's wife actually started coming to our church, Claudia. She was coming on and off for about a year. She was fighting thyroid cancer. And one of the last times I saw her, I gave her my card and I said, "Now, Claudia, you need to call me when you go into the hospital because I want to come and visit with you and pray with you." And she didn't. So 2 days before Thanksgiving, comes to your church a little bit. I just want you to know she died, she passed away. And I was wondering if you would officiate her funeral. I don't have a church home. I don't know anybody. And Woody has a Catholic background, but he had never been there. So well, yeah, absolutely. So we officiated the funeral. And the funeral itself was on a Saturday. And so Woody says to me, I appreciate this so much. He says, I am going to come to your church tomorrow. Now, how many times have you heard that? And I'm like, right, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, Thanksgiving weekend, there's no way he's coming to my church. Of course, part of me was thinking, too, it's Thanksgiving weekend, nobody's going to be there, but, come on, anyway. So, when you not know, he shows up the next day, early, right? We talk about next time, maybe, why your guests come so early and nobody else is there. Please, church people, get there early. And so he shows up, and there's like 5 people there, 2 of them are my husband and I. And so I'm like, Rob, come over here and just keep him busy, give him coffee, do something. And Woody shows up on his bicycle because he lost his driver's license for DUIs, so he rode everywhere on his bike. And he's in, I don't think they call them leggings for men, but you know what I'm talking about? Bicycle pants. He's in bicycle pants and his helmet and spandex from head to toe. Spandex. I love him. I love Woody. Woody's been part of our church for 5 years. He still wears spandex every Sunday and ushers in spandex.
Ushers in the spandex.
Grace, God's grace, right? And so he's been coming about a month, and Rob's like, Woody, you're ushering today. He's like, what? Yeah, I'm ushering. So Rob just threw him in there, gave him a place to belong. Yes. Long before he ever believed. When he accepted Christ a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to baptize him. He was so excited about being baptized that he almost took me down with him. Rob had to grab me, so I didn't go too. And I've just seen him grow and leaps and bounds. But there's still a lot of work. I talked to Woody last week, and he's in Kansas City visiting his son. He's like, oh, Pastor, come on, I'm staying an extra week because, the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. And he says, I gotta put some money down. I'm like, Woody, no. He's like, oh, I'll do a small bet in my son's name. I'm like, no. Your name? No, do not put my name on that Kansas City. I just want us to think a little bit bigger about your responsibility list. They are beautiful, beautiful people. And if we'll just push the doors open a little bit more, right? Mm-hmm. Give them a place to belong before they leave. Move the end church. I want you to write down, before you go, I'm going to pray for you. I want you to write down one takeaway today and one next step that you're going to do in the next 30 days regarding outreach and evangelism. Maybe it's a one-on-one relationship that you've already seen God at work, and you realize I just need to be a little more patient. Wait there for coffee. Listen. Maybe you already see a need in your community. Or maybe you see a group that you've been trying to meet, and you need to get together with another person and have coffee and talk about how can we minister to this group over here, like the soccer kids? What can we do to just show them the love of Christ? Well, I really want you to write that down before you walk out the door today, because you're going to get in your car and you're going to head to Starbucks, and you're going to forget, and then you're going to come back next week. Next month,